Members will be recognized by order of seniority for their 5 minutes of questioning. An additional round of questioning may be called after all the members have been recognized. I want to also acknowledge the many members on this committee on both sides of the aisle who have been fighting the terrorist attack in their service in the United States military. So those who are veterans here have been doing that, and those in the government service doing that before you came to Congress. Thank you for your service. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Director Wray, since January of 2021, approximately 1.8 million illegal alien gotaways have evaded Border Patrol and entered our country. And this doesn't even account for the unknown gotaways, which former Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz testified before this committee could be about 20% of that number, meaning the real number of gotaways is well over 2 million. Can the FBI guarantee the American people that known or suspected terrorists, including any from Hamas or other terror groups, are not amongst those gotaways?
Well, certainly the group of people that you're talking about are a source of great concern for us. That's why we're aggressively using all 56 of our joint terrorism task forces.
But there's really no way for you to guarantee that Hamas isn't in those.
Well, again, as you say, there's the unknown unknown and the known unknown.
Right.
But what I can tell you is that our 56 Joint Terrorism Task Forces are working their tails off to make sure that they suss out and identify potential terrorist suspects, whether they're on the watch list or not.
You think that number, that increased number, increases the threat to the American citizens?
I think anytime you have a group of people in the United States that we don't know nearly enough about, that is a source of concern for us from a perspective in our lane of protecting Americans here.
So wording it maybe another way, if it were lower, if that number were lower and the border wasn't as open as it is, and we'd be safer.
I think greater fidelity about who's coming in this country and how they're getting in is essential to making sure we protect Americans from all sorts of threats, including a potential terrorist attack.
Yeah, I do too. Director Wray, since taking office, we've had, with the policies that are implemented at the border, 6.5 million southwest border encounters and a total of 7.8 million nationwide. Does it concern the FBI that the policies of this administration and the Department of Homeland Security are allowing this unprecedented number of unknown and unvetted people into the country? I know it's a rewording of the previous question, but go ahead and answer.
Well, again, I want to stay in my lane. When it comes to physical security, border security, I want to defer to Department of Homeland Security on that.
But that increased number is increasing the challenge before you and the FBI, right?
But certainly I can tell you that we have seen an increase in the number of so-called KSTs attempting to cross in the last 5 years. And we are concerned not just about the people who are watch listed, but about those who could have gotten in some other way and about whom you may not have sufficient information at the time they came in to identify them as a source of concern.
Those individuals that watch list that we talk about, why do you think in 4 years before this there were only 11 and suddenly there are 294 in the past few years? Why do you think that's so?
I can't really speak to that issue. It's not in my lane. I can tell you that the threats that come from the other side of the border are very much consuming all 56 of our field offices, not just in the border states. That's why I made the point.
Sure, I agree. If I heard you correctly, what you just said is not every state in the country is a border state now. Is that what you just said?
Well, I didn't.
I mean, the threats to every state.
That way, but the threats that come from the other side of the border are affecting every state.
Absolutely, 100%. We ask the governor of Massachusetts. She's screaming at the top of her lungs about the situation at the southwest border. Your boss, the Attorney General, came in and said to us that it was very clear the cartel strategy was to take advantage of the current policies, overwhelm the crossing sites, and then use the Border Patrol agents being overwhelmed by that group to then bypass. Do you have any reason to disagree with him that that's the cartel strategy?
I wouldn't have any reason to disagree with the Attorney General.
Do you find it interesting that 2 months after that, Secretary Mayorkas came in and said he was unaware of that cartel strategy? Do you find that interesting?
I I'm not familiar with Secretary Mayorkas'
that testimony. Yeah, he came in to us and told us that he was totally unaware of that testimony, that was the cartel strategy, despite your boss in the Senate clearly recognizing that it is. Let me just say this in the few seconds I have left. I'd like to ask each of you to take back to the people who work for you that despite our political differences on this dais, we deeply appreciate the men and women who are manning their posts and doing the best they can for this country. As someone who went down range and was in a helicopter that had bullet holes ripping through the bottom, bullets ripping through the bottom of it, I understand the courage that it takes to do the jobs that you and your people do. And so I want to make sure I ask each of you, despite our political differences, to take this message back. We are deeply appreciative of the men and women who man their posts for this country's safety. With that, I yield.